I met Sarah when we were both in college. She was bright, outgoing, and everything I wasn't. I had always been the quiet, reserved type, content to focus on my studies and keep to myself. Sarah was a force of nature. She walked into every room with a confidence that drew people in. I couldn't understand why she took an interest in me at first, but I wasn't complaining. She was unlike anyone I'd ever known, and in her presence, I felt alive in a way I had never felt before. The early days of our relationship were magical. We spent countless hours talking about our dreams, our fears, and everything in between. It felt as though we had known each other for years, even though we'd only just met. There was an energy between us that I couldn't quite explain, but it made everything feel right. I thought, perhaps naively, that we were invincible. She made me feel seen and valued in a way I'd never experienced before. We got married 2 years after graduation, and I remember that day like it was yesterday. The vows, the promises, the hope for a future together. It all felt so real, so permanent. We were partners in every sense of the word, and the world seemed like a better place with her by my side. Over the years, we built a life together. We bought a house, adopted a dog, and spent weekends visiting family and friends. Our routine became comfortable, almost predictable, but I didn't mind. I thought stability was a good thing. But over time, something started to change. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable. Sarah began working longer hours at her job. She told me she was up for a promotion, which she had been wanting for years. I encouraged her, even though I missed the time we used to spend together. Still, I was proud of her ambition. Then, she started going out more often with her friends. When she returned late from these outings, I would ask about her night, and she would give me vague answers. I didn't think much of it at the time, just brushed it off as her being busy with work and social obligations. After all, everyone needs their space, right? But as weeks turned into months, the distance between us grew. We barely talked anymore, and when we did, the conversations felt strained. I tried to convince myself that it was just a phase, that life had gotten in the way. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She seemed different, more distracted, less engaged with me. It wasn't until she started spending more nights away from home that I started to feel uneasy. Sometimes she would come back and immediately head to bed, barely saying a word to me. There were moments when I wondered if it was all in my head, but deep down, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was off. I began to look for clues. I didn't want to be paranoid, but I couldn't help myself. I would glance at her phone when she left it unattended, check her social media when she wasn't around, trying to find some kind of explanation for her behavior. There were a few things that didn't add up. A missed call from an unknown number, a text message that she quickly deleted, and an odd, almost guilty look she would get when I asked her about it. I hated myself for even thinking it, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. The worst part was that when I brought up my concerns, she would brush me off, tell me I was overthinking things. She would laugh it off as if I was being ridiculous. And maybe I was. I wanted to believe her, wanted to think I was just imagining things. But there was this sinking feeling in my chest that wouldn't go away, a quiet voice in the back of my mind telling me that my wife, the woman I loved more than anything, was pulling away from me in a way I couldn't quite explain. It was like I was losing her, and I didn't know how to stop it. I couldn't shake the thought that something bigger was happening, but every time I tried to confront her, I felt like I was being unreasonable. She seemed so confident in her reassurances that I began to doubt myself. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But deep inside, I knew this feeling wasn't just some fleeting suspicion. Something was wrong. It was a Thursday evening when I finally saw something that confirmed all my suspicions. I had been out running errands, and when I got home early, I expected Sarah to be there. Instead, the house was empty. Her car was in the driveway, but the front door was locked. I let myself in and started calling her name, but there was no answer. After a few minutes, I noticed her phone on the kitchen counter. It was unlocked, sitting there face up. Normally, she was very protective of her phone, always keeping it on her, but tonight, it was just lying there. I hesitated for a moment, telling myself I shouldn't invade her privacy, but the nagging feeling in my gut was too strong. I picked up the phone and glanced at the screen. There were several missed calls from an unknown number, a number I had never seen before. The name wasn't saved to her contacts, but the texts that followed made my heart race. They weren't just casual conversations. They were personal, intimate, even flirtatious. The kind of texts I hadn't seen between us in a long time. I couldn't breathe. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through them. The messages were clearly not from a friend. It was evident that she was involved with someone. My stomach twisted into knots, and my mind raced through a million thoughts, but all of them led to one conclusion. She was having an affair. I wanted to throw the phone down, to forget everything, but I couldn't. The evidence was staring at me, undeniable. The conversations weren't just about friendship or work. They were about emotions, about a connection, a kind of intimacy that shouldn't exist between a married woman and another man. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The woman I thought I knew was now someone else entirely. I put the phone back on the counter and paced the room. The world seemed to tilt around me. I wanted to call her, confront her, but what would I say? What could I say that wouldn't feel like a complete breakdown? I was angry, hurt, but I was also terrified. What if I was wrong? What if I was just reading too much into things? But deep down, I knew I wasn't wrong. I knew I had found the truth, the thing that had been eating at me for months. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours, and finally, I heard the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. I stood by the door, trying to collect myself, trying to figure out what I would say when she walked in. I was already bracing for the argument, the lies, the excuses. I was ready for anything, except for what actually happened next. She walked in, smiling as though nothing had changed. There was no hesitation in her step, no guilt in her eyes. She was calm, collected, almost as if she were coming home from a normal day at work. But I couldn't let it go. I had to know. I couldn't let her get away with this any longer. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. She froze, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, guilt, regret? But it was gone in an instant. She simply walked past me, heading toward the kitchen as if she hadn't heard the question. I followed her, my pulse quickening. "Sarah, don't lie to me."
"Who is he?"
She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice too calm, too rehearsed. I couldn't take it anymore. "Then what is it?" "Because I found her texts. I know what's going on." Her face tightened. I stared at Sarah, her face unreadable, and the words she had just spoken replayed in my mind, each one cutting deeper than the last. She had cheated on me. She had gone out and found someone else, and now she was standing here telling me it didn't mean anything. I wanted to shout, to scream at her, but the anger felt distant, somewhere far away. Instead, I felt numb, as though I were watching someone else's life unfold before me. I couldn't comprehend how everything we had built together could be reduced to this. The years of love, the plans for the future, it all felt like a cruel joke. And yet, here she was, standing before me, confessing to the affair as if it were a trivial mistake. I had loved her with everything I had, and she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. It wasn't just the act of cheating that stung, it was the complete disregard for me, for the bond we had. She had dismissed me so easily, thrown away years of trust for something that seemed so meaningless in her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said again, as if repeating the words would somehow make them true. "But it happened, and I can't undo it." I felt a surge of emotion, a mix of rage and heartbreak, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed answers, not more empty apologies.
"So, what now?"
"What do you expect me to do? Pretend like nothing happened?" The question came out sharper than I intended, but it was the truth. How could I pretend that our marriage, everything we had, was still intact after what she had done? She shifted uncomfortably, looking away. "I don't know. I never planned for this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you. It's just, I felt like I was losing myself, and he made me feel alive again." She paused, searching for the right words. "But it's not the same. It's not like what we had. The finality of her statement hit me harder than anything. She had already made her decision. She had already justified her actions in her mind. The affair wasn't even about the other man, it was about her. She had checked out of our marriage, and now she was telling me it was my fault, my shortcomings that led her to look elsewhere. And maybe, in some twisted way, she believed that. She had convinced herself that it wasn't a betrayal, it was just a misguided attempt at finding herself. I didn't know what to say anymore. I was drowning in a sea of confusion, unable to grasp the reality of it all. Every word she spoke seemed to drive a wedge further between us. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry that I had found out. That was the part that hurt the most. She had emotionally detached from me long before I even realized what was happening. To her, the affair was just an escape, a temporary fix for something that she felt was broken inside of her. I don't want you to think it was because of something you did, she added, her voice quieter now. It's not about you. It's about me, my needs, my feelings. I shook my head in disbelief. She had made it so easy to pin the blame on herself, to wrap the affair in this neat little package of self-discovery. But that didn't change the fact that she had lied to me, that she had hidden it all behind closed doors while I remained oblivious. I had trusted her with everything, and she had thrown that trust away without a second thought. You say it's not about me, I said, my voice barely a whisper, but it is. It's about everything we had, everything I thought we were building together. And now you're telling me it meant nothing? She met my gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and uncertainty. For the first time, I saw a flicker of regret, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to erase the betrayal. I didn't want it to go this far, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I never wanted to hurt you. Her words felt hollow, empty. She wasn't apologizing because she understood the pain she had caused. She was apologizing because she knew she had been caught, and the consequences were now inescapable. I didn't need her pity, and I certainly didn't need her excuses. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, the weight of those words crushing me. The idea of forgiving her seemed impossible. How could I forgive someone who had taken everything I thought I knew about love and shattered it into 1,000 pieces? How could I forgive someone who had made me feel like I wasn't enough? I don't expect you to, she replied softly. I just want you to understand why it happened. I looked at her, the woman I had loved for so long, and I realized I didn't know her anymore. She was a stranger, someone who had taken everything from me and offered nothing in return. Her explanation didn't change anything. It didn't erase the hurt or the betrayal. I don't think I can live like this, I said quietly, the reality of it all sinking in. I can't pretend like everything's okay. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I understand, she whispered. And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. Our marriage was over. The trust had been broken beyond repair, and no amount of apologies or explanations would bring it back. I had to walk away, as painful as it was. I had to take control of my own life, even if it meant facing the terrifying uncertainty of starting over. Because in the end, it was the only way I could begin to heal. I spent the next few days in a haze, going through the motions of life, but everything felt wrong. The house that had once been our home now felt empty, like a shell that no longer held any meaning. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, what Sarah had done. I wanted to scream, to throw everything out the window, but I didn't. I simply sat there, processing the truth, letting the reality of it settle in. The life I had known was gone, and nothing would ever be the same. I couldn't avoid it any longer. I had to make a decision. Was I going to stay and try to fix this, or was I going to walk away for good? But as much as I wanted to believe in the possibility of repair, something inside me told me it was over. The betrayal had torn too deep. It wasn't just the affair. It was the deceit, the lies, the realization that Sarah had checked out of our marriage long before I ever knew. I wasn't just hurt by the affair. I was devastated by how easily she had discarded everything we had built. I thought about the man she had been with, about how she had found something with him that she couldn't find with me. It stung, but it was also a reality I couldn't ignore. She had sought comfort elsewhere, had found something that made her feel alive again, and for her, that was enough. It didn't matter how much I loved her or how hard I had tried. I wasn't enough, and that truth cut deeper than the affair itself. In the days that followed, I started to realize something important. I had to stop blaming myself. I had spent so long wondering what I could have done differently, what I had missed, and how I could have been better. But I couldn't change what had already happened. I couldn't fix something that wasn't my fault. The affair was not my fault. I couldn't let her actions define who I was, and I couldn't keep torturing myself with what-ifs. I started spending more time outside, trying to clear my head, to get some space from the memories that felt like they were closing in on me. There were moments when I thought I might never feel whole again, moments when the pain felt unbearable. But as the days went on, something shifted. I realized that healing wasn't going to happen overnight. It wasn't going to happen just because I wanted